I like that about this field because people do come from all different walks of life. It makes it really nicely musically diverse.
In the same way as like I want any of my community music projects to like feel like a community. It's like a bunch of pals getting together to make music, and some people know each other really well and some people don't know each other that well, but you're all there at the same gig and you all just like chip in.
I identify as disabled. I've always had kind of specific access needs that are often perceived as complicated by other people. So I'm kind of used to thinking out of the box, and that kind of feeds into my practice.
We start with hello, then we do a warm up, then we'll have something creative that they're putting some input into, then we'll have something we know really well, then we'll maybe expand on something else that we know, and then we'll do something familiar, then some relaxing, then say goodbye. I co-founded Hear My Music back in 2010. We just graduated from a community music master's, and we thought we wanted to do something that we couldn't quite see was happening. Started delivering projects in schools and then community centres. We started it as a small company, so I've been running it pretty much myself until a couple of years ago when we took on some part-time staff.
So how did I become involved in community music? So I basically always knew that I wanted to work with people, I guess. And music was basically one of the only things I was kind of good at school, and kind of felt like I wanted to continue. So I discovered that there was a community music undergrad at the University of Aberdeen, and basically set my heart on that.
I went to university to study classical music and hated every minute of it because it was all about like being on your own in a practice room, learning your scales and not making music with other people, and it was pants. I hated it, and like I knew that I really wanted to make music with other people, and I thought that I wanted to make it in an orchestra, but actually after like 2 years in university I was like, that's pure not what I want to do. But then at that point, when I was at the point of really hating university, my university started a new course, and it was this community music course, which just sounded like absolutely perfect. It was like my absolute dream course.
I wanted to do music therapy, and the reason that I'd chosen the community music course was basically to get the experience of the placements, because I knew that would be much harder to get out with of that degree. And then I basically discovered that there was all this really cool stuff going on in the community world that was using music as like a tool to community development. But I realised like how many different ways people were doing what they were calling the same thing.
The project that you're following just now, the partnership with the GLAD Foundation, started back in 2013, and it was one parent actually who got in touch with the GLAD Cafe and said there's no provision for my son to do music out of school, and I would like there to be a slightly informal conversation that then started up into what was then called GLAD Tuesdays. It was just a 1 hour after school group session, and it's grown into 3 full after school afternoons now. The first step is getting them through the door, and then, figuring out what's going to make them tick and how we're going to work with them. And then we can sort of build up working in groups. So their spaces come up because of that, because we'll sort of be working with someone individually and then they'll be in a small group.
When I started working in community music, because I was just out of university and I was very like, I'd learned how to be a community musician and I'd learned all the rules, and I was like, right, I need to dress smart for work, I'm going to go and do my community music job. But over the years, and especially now, it's really starting to just become me, just like part punk musician, part community musician.
every time I try and explain my job to anyone, they're like, "Oh, is it music therapy?" And I'm like, well, no, because that's what I've tried to get away from. Community music has a wider variety of intentions within it. It could be to help people to communicate. It could be to mend a rift within a community. It could be to make people feel better.
No, we've not had any in-person sessions, so don't know if you remember the timeline, but there was basically 1 week before the schools closed when everything was kind of cancelled, but the schools were still on. So we didn't have sessions that week, but then the school closure announcement came and we were set up to go online the following week.
We have lost a few folk who just won't, music doesn't happen on the computer, so I'm not doing it. Yeah. But I think especially for the group that you've seen, they're all really like, yeah, we're doing music. Just it has to happen, so it has to happen.
In a lot of ways, like being in my own space makes me a lot more willing to like take more risks within my practice in what I do, and that like because I feel comfortable and I know where things are. If I'm in a room in a random building, I don't usually know where anything is, and it can be quite overwhelming for me. And I think I've definitely seen that within the participants as well. Like a lot of the participants have just like really thrived being in their own space.
It was a really lovely discovery. Some of our particularly individual sessions, we noticed anxiety levels were a lot reduced, which was lovely. It took the participants sort of a different amount of time for each individual to learn how to do it. We discovered that kids are so much better at technology than us. I don't think that was a surprise.
It's very important to me that technology is accessible to everyone.
Because of the work that Emily and I have done in the past, and I guess like the sort of being a musician comes into this. You go and you tour and you drive to Bath and you're not really sure where you're staying and you play a gig and then afterwards you're sleeping on a grotty floor. You kind of just have to get on with it. And on the like work side of that as well, Emily and I have both worked in like situations where like kids will shout at you or throw chairs at you, or like it can be a little bit violent or a bit scary, or like somebody will say something that's just so left field. But you just have to get on with it. You just have to do it. It's like the nature of the job. You just go, oh, this is fine, we'll get on with it. And it always is fine. And it's actually one of my favourite parts of the job. It's just like, who knows what might happen.
I know that there's still been loads of problems with people not being able to work from home when they maybe should have. But on a very, very large scale, people have been able and enabled to work from home. And yeah, it's been like quite a lot of learning for a lot of businesses. There's had to be a lot of compromises. But this is something that like disabled people have been asking for like the whole of history, and it was impossible apparently, and then it wasn't impossible because not disabled people wanted it.
The nice thing about the pandemic is that like it's forced everybody onto a level playing field. We're all stuck online. A sort of general pandemic thing that I've noticed is that we're all really good now, or not really good, but better than we were at asking each other what we need.
Yeah, we're probably doing a lot more movement and action songs than I would have done necessarily with everybody before, and just because they work online. Like, instead of like a big sort of drumming warm-up where you're physically going, you know, doing all this, we'll do something that's visible in this part of the screen.
This thing about work that we're doing just becomes, oh, here's a group of people making music. Like the fact that they all have autism becomes secondary because we're just posting stuff and people are also, everybody's doing stuff on Zoom.
But there are certainly a lot of things that we've discovered that have been a real advantage, which we will take away and possibly have some sort of hybrid model. And it's probably less about travel actually and more about kind of anxiety levels and comfort levels in accessing the sessions. But we'll never do this exclusively unless we have to, but we'll take away all the good bits of it.
I've had to learn to be quite a lot more patient with myself because I think I probably did expect to just be able to like be the same practitioner online as offline. At some points, it's felt like a completely different job.
I'd say turn taking is easier on Zoom because you can spend that time waiting for somebody, and if you're making a sound but you're on mute, you're not going to interrupt them, you know.
The thing that's interesting about it is that a lot of folk with autism really can't handle lots of live, like a full band playing live would be too much. So the Zoom thing has worked really well for folk who get a bit overwhelmed in physical presence, but they know on Zoom that if they get overwhelmed they can just turn us off and then we're gone. And actually I think because of that, a lot of folk have really taken to the online working more than they maybe prefer that.
We desperately miss playing together. You can't make that up, but there's so much you can do.
Thank you so much, and welcome to Greer Pester and Kapil Seshasayee. We're all here live for the first time ever, we hope, from the Glad Cafe in the south side of Glasgow. So that was the premiere of your brilliant new short film and collage, Everyone, Everyone, a collaboration between the two of you. What a brilliant and beautiful thing it is.
So thank you. Appreciate it.
So the project for Glad Online came about during the first lockdown last year. And the brief was pretty open. Greer, could you tell us a bit about how the idea for Everyone came about and developed?
Yeah, me and Kapil have only actually met in person maybe like 2 or 3 times. So we met up for a walk in Queen's Park and started kind of discussing ideas. And we were both really keen to kind of focus on disability rights and sort of focusing on the online space and how people have adapted to working in that online space, online facilitation. And Kapil knew Beth from the music scene, so we connected with Hear My Music and decided that we would just start off like sitting in on their sessions and kind of just learning about how they work. And it was quite an organic process from that, really. It was just really informative to be, sit in and observe an online space and how they use different kind of facilitation techniques that were very relevant to, stimulating your senses and working in the body, and it was all very encompassing. So we kind of each took our own inspirations from that process.
Yeah, sitting in on the sessions and stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, really well put. It felt like it led really naturally once we kind of got the ball rolling. Like, because I think, me and Beth have known each other many years doing loads of gigs in many basements across the city. So it led quite naturally from, oh, I know Beth does community workshop stuff. Oh, the GLAD does the same community workshop stuff. Why don't we focus around that? And I've been a carer for 10 plus years. My parents are both disabled, so there's that experience playing into it as well. And, you know, me and you were chatting about how we wanted to put our own stamp on what we thought was really great about the GLAD, which is all these community things they do.
And a bit more of a kind of insight into the, like they're quite intimate spaces, so more of a kind of personal experience. And I guess like everyone is like trying to embody like that there is like a voice for everyone, and we worked kind of directly with the facilitators and the participants, and just had a different angle on our experience, their experience of the pandemic, and ways of working through that. So a lot of it was inspired by their kind of creative processes, their games, like the titles of their songs. Like you ended up taking a lot of inspiration from their.
Yeah, I think as any songwriter or musician worth their salt would agree with, there's a beauty in simplicity, and there's nothing more impressive than someone who can take 3 chords or even less than that and make something really memorable out of it, because you don't think there's much to work with there. Me speaking personally, it's and watching these workshops where folk like Emily and Sorka and Beth and stuff would take these really easy to digest bits of music and make them into something that was all their own but digestible for the folk on the Zoom or the Skype to use to play a game or to sing along. It was really good. Like, okay, every now and again there'd be like a cover tune, but they would work on, they would create songs based on improvised input on the day. And it was this really great mix of anyone could join in at any part and know exactly where they were, but it could also become anything as well. So there was a lot of scope to change, but it was also easy to immediately know where you were at any point. So it was very well curated in that way.
So we decided that we were going to do like a sort of short film, and I do a lot of collage work, so I think the cutout art was something I was keen to translate to like stop frame animation. So I sort of wrestled technically for a long time with lots of apps trying to do that. But a lot of the imagery you're seeing in the film is quite it's pretty symbolic, quite literal, and also like a lot of content directly influenced by the sessions and the songs that they did, and the images that come into mind and the storytelling, and but then also kind of in relation to a sort of visual of Kapil's soundtrack. So maybe you could talk a wee bit about how you did the audio and.
Yeah, sure. I let it lead quite naturally in terms of where I wanted to go with it. Texturally speaking, it's quite synth heavy, no guitars or anything, unlike my own music. I like a lot of hyperpop adjacent producers like Arca and Sophie and FKA Twigs at the moment, so there's a lot of that kind of worming in and out of it. I felt like some of the work kind of tributes Sophie a little bit, one of my favourite Scottish musicians, but I also wanted it to have this almost kind of Ivor Cutlery kind of whimsy to it, where if it sounded really dense and jazzy, it would feel a bit weird and jarring with the vibe. I wanted it to be friendly. I wanted it to be playful, like your visuals, to be honest, because I knew what kind of aesthetic we were kind of going for from the get-go, and I thought, I don't want to be selfish and do my own thing for the sake of it. I want to do something that's running in parallel with the visual, but also with the themes. So I'm trying to keep in with the world that this film inhabits, but also trying to be a bit more interesting with it as well. So
And then I think we did interviews with Sorka and Beth and Emily, and that was like really, really useful. I mean, I think we had about, was it 4 hours, 3 hours of conversation that Kapil carefully narrowed down and edited to those like 13 minutes. But
it was. I think it's frustrating because specifically with you, Beth, there were so many like. Do you remember when that happened at a gig? Weren't gigs brilliant? I hope they come back at some point in the next 50 years, kind of thing. And there were so many anecdotes that had to be left on the cutting room floor. We'll release a supercut of only the most irrelevant parts of the interviews in like a year's time or something. But it was really fun working through it because, it was quite effortless really to work through. It was almost hard to pick the best bits because they were all
content.
Good. Yeah, for sure.
And just like, a really nice conversation flow. Like, all these guys were like super open and generous with their time, and you know, explaining their working processes. So I think that really helped, like, create a structure for the film. Basically, that gave us the narrative, like, and it was their, you know, working with their voices directly. So yeah.
Shall we bring in Beth there? So Beth Black is a musician and one of the facilitators for the Hear My Music group, and one of the voices that we hear speaking in the film. So Beth, can you tell us a bit about how the young people responded to working with Greer and Kapil?
Yes. Hello. Oh, I'm not on mic, am I? Yes, I am.
You're
Hello.
there.
Yeah, the group that we worked with. One of the groups of we call them the Monday Boys. They're so receptive to folk coming in. They're so like welcoming. And then Greer and Kapil come in, and we were like, "You do know that you're just going to be a participant as soon as you join this group." So it just quite naturally, like, they just came in, and the boys in the group are always so like happy to show what they're working on or to try new things and things. So it's such a natural, just like collaboration. It was dead nice.
And Greer and Kapil, do you think the way that the young people were interacting with each other and approaching music and creativity has influenced your practice in any way going forward?
I think so. I think it's made me feel more open to new ideas and a kind of... The thing I noticed immediately was that it wasn't awkward when we joined the groups, because you know what musicians are like. We're all obsessed with egos and like, you can't see this yet. It's not perfect. Whereas they were very much like, you can see the process. It's all good. And I loved how open that was, and how, like, you know, they weren't fussed about us being there as long as we weren't disruptive. And we felt like we were just there to observe, but we got swept up into it and took part. And yeah, I felt like it's altered my process in that going forward, coming in and out of whatever we're going to see next in terms of the pandemic and lockdown, I'm into collaboration more than ever, I think. And that's off the back of the attitude that these young folk had, I think. And these are people like half my age who are approaching it with so much more open-mindedness. And there's a lot to learn there, I think. What about you, Greer?
Yeah, I think also I personally really enjoyed the ritual of like every Monday coming in for 40 minutes and just like having a lovely sing-along and getting involved in the games, and always felt like much better. Like, because I think, yeah, personally for everyone, having some sort of routine during this time, or yeah, like a connected space has been so important. And also, like, as a facilitator myself, I found it really inspiring, like, taking a step back and, like, watching how facilitators work and work with the sort of social glue of a group, especially with music, you know, this sort of synchronicity and trying to, like, pass from one to the other and make sure everyone's got, like, a space to express themselves, but also doing group work. Like, it was really impressive to sort of sit in and like actually take time to watch that, especially online. You know, there's all these things that you do naturally in a room that we've had to sort of translate to an online space, and you're suddenly got, like, you know, 6 Zoom windows that you're trying to manage, or like read every participant to make sure that they're, you know, feeling comfortable. So yeah.
Yeah, Beth, has lockdown and working digitally changed the way you think you'll work with young people going forward?
Yeah, I think it probably has. It's been so long now that I can't even imagine what it's going to be like going back into work in real life. But yeah, I think especially with the group on a Monday and like sort of like working with people with additional support needs, the human element of it's kind of taken away slightly when there's 2 screens in between you. So the thing, I went and did a session in somebody's garden recently, and it was fantastic, and we were in real life. The thing I noticed was like, oh, you can react really naturally to what someone's playing. It doesn't have to be like, this is my turn, now it's your turn, now it's Greer's turn. It can just be like, oh, you're making a sound, I'm going to respond to that. So I think that's like, I'm really missing that. I think that's what I'm looking forward to getting back to that bit of it.
And Greer and Kapil, is there any one thing that you feel you'll take away from the project that will really stick with you about it? Maybe ideas that you want to take forwards?
Yeah, I think it's definitely opened up animation and movies as a, like, yeah, I think it was the first time that I've done that for a long time since I was at university. So, like, technically in that sense, but also, yeah, like, really enjoyed working with other people and responding, you know, in that sense, in a collaborative sense. responding to how they work, and taking inspiration from like the kind of social human glue of these spaces.
I think I can get, pre-working on this, I think I had the habit of, I do this one thing, and I was focusing like a laser on that one thing, and everything's an offshoot of that one thing. Whereas it's so out with what I normally do, this project, but it's been so fulfilling for that reason. I mean, I've never sat in on a workshop like that before. I have no experience of community music at all, but I learned so much from every little thing we did. And again, even just working on a soundtrack for a short film, it's not something I've done for a long time. And I thought I wouldn't be any good at it, but I had to be more confident. So there was definitely the sense of, I felt like I learned as much about me as I did about the process. So there was the sense of, hey, I've learned these new skills like soundtracking and learning how to collaborate on that sense, but getting outside your box and doing something, it made me feel more rejuvenated when I returned to my own music later, because I don't know how people are with the way they're approaching projects, but you're literally stuck in one place right now, and you can end up being like, this thing isn't perfect, and you just do that one thing again and again and again, and you drive yourself a bit crazy. But you go away, you do something a bit different, you see some new faces, you learn some stuff about them. Because, I don't know about you, but I quite enjoyed the challenge of, we've only met 3 times and all our correspondence has been online. And that in itself, it's almost this very meta
it's
thing.
Very meta.
Yeah, and that's feeding into the way
online
that
online learning, it was all very digital. And certainly, highlighting accessibility and inclusivity in these spaces. It's certainly highlighted, it's been a massive learning process for me, sort of having to change the way that I'm thinking and consider all these different elements of how you make these spaces accessible, in both in real life and online. So totally. It's been really good for highlighting that, I think.
I would draw everyone's attention to Sorka's little soundbite in the movie. What were people's excuses before if we can suddenly all work in this accessible way? Disabled people have been asking for that for history, basically. But, short of this devolving into a bunch of able-bodied people patting themselves on the back. Yeah, exactly. I didn't want it to be 20 minutes of us just doing that. It's about us recognizing that the film is, I don't want to speak for you, but I feel like there is this sense of, hey, it's great that we've learned about this new thing, but what next? How can we take steps to address these notions of a lack of accessibility for people? Because it makes such a difference in terms of inclusivity to just make it possible for someone to attend online if they can't be there in person. And it doesn't just have to be someone who lives in a remote part of the world. It could be someone who lives in the city, but if that place doesn't have a ramp, they can't come and to the event. And I feel like I've learned a lot about that side of things and how lockdowns helped a lot of people find accessibility now that we're all on this level playing field where we all have to dial in online. What was our excuse before? I got nothing.
So we didn't have one, I'm afraid.
Yeah, that's it. So important conversations worth having, but it's almost like you can get lost in your own wee world and forget these conversations aren't being had. You can be like, ableism is wrong, and knowing that makes you a hero, and I'm like, no, you have to do something about it. And this film's put that at the forefront of my mind, and I'm sure you feel the same way.
Sort of highlighting different languages that you can use to connect that aren't just, like non-verbal, there's so many aspects to being a human that we need to be considering and how we connect, I think.
So lots for us all to think about and take forward in the ways that we can ourselves. We are lucky enough to be about to hear a set from your new album, Beth.
Yes, you are.
Can you tell us a bit about what we're about to hear?
So you're about to hear some sad songs from my solo album, which I've brought here that I can plug. You can buy it on vinyl from my Bandcamp. Kapil has bought it. I kind of started the solo project. It's under the name Flinch because when we went into lockdown, pre-lockdown, I was in lots of bands and I made music all week with lots and lots of people, and then lockdown happened and I was on my own, and the only option was to make songs on my own, so I did. So here we are, and I'll play some of them for you. And it's
brilliant.
Nice.
Thanks so much, Beth Black.
Here. This first song is called Escape from Rupture Farms, which is a bit of if you know, you know. If you know what I've spent most of lockdown playing. It's so nice to hear clapping. Do you know, when you do live streams from your house, it feels like you don't really need to be in tune. And as soon as you've got a real audience, like, I should tune my guitar. This song is called Staring at the Broken Cornicing on Your Ceiling. It's the first track from my album, if you want to buy it.
Broken
more after a quick guitar swap. Conveniently, this one is the last song from my album. It's called I Said You Could Have This, But I've Taken It Back. And lots of people have said to me, the titles on your songs are really weird. What do they mean? And I have kind of like purposely not told anyone any of it. But this song is called I Said You Could Have It, But I've Taken It Back, because a pal of mine saw a tweet and said, that would make a really good lyric. Can I use it? And I said, yeah, of course. And then I stole it back. So sorry about that. Maybe I'll see if I'm in tune. Yeah. Took a walk down
Thank you so much, Beth. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Now, we're going to play another very short film, this time about the work of the GLAD Foundation. Next weekend, a gang of us from the GLAD, some of us horribly unprepared, will be doing the Kilt Walk, walking over 20 miles around Glasgow, joining the dots between our fellow arts and music venues that have been forced to close during lockdown. We're doing this to raise funds to keep the GLAD Foundation's programme of music activities accessible to as many young people in Glasgow's south side as possible. We know it's been a hard year for so many, but if you're able, we'd be really grateful for any donations, big or small. Please just follow the link at the end of this short film.
So you know the Glad Cafe and Glad Rags Thrift Shop. But did you know the profits from these places go to support the GLAD Foundation? The foundation runs and supports a number of music projects for people of all ages in the local community and beyond. From samba drumming classes at the back of the cafe to music sessions in local primary schools. And even though our doors are closed during lockdown, the work of the GLAD Foundation has continued with online workshops, recorded music sessions and supporting local musicians and artists. To find out more or to support the work of the GLAD Foundation, check out our website. This year we are doing the Kilt Walk to raise funds for the GLAD Foundation. To sponsor us, check out our Kilt Walk page.
So all that remains is to say thank you so much to everyone involved in this project, particularly Greer and Kapil, obviously, and thank you so much, Beth, for this evening as well. To Creative Scotland, our funders, without whom the project wouldn't have been able to happen. Watch this space for more GLAD online projects in the coming months from Adam Stearns and Steve Curtis, and also from Faith Evans and Suze Bear. Faith Elliott, sorry, Faith. Faith Elliott and Suze Bear. I've got it written down and everything. That's it for now. Thank you all so much for tuning in tonight and for your support, and we will see you very soon. Bye.